The arrival. Alexander Whitman stood by the tall window of his estate watching the morning sun cast golden rays across the manicured gardens below his three children, played outside their laughter, echoing through the halls, but his heart remained heavy with grief. 2 years had passed since Victoria, his beloved wife, had died, suddenly leaving him alone to raise their triplets, Oliver, Charlotte, and Benjamin. He had built walls around his heart, determined never to let anyone hurt his family again. The household staff moved quietly through the mansion, preparing for the arrival of a new maid. Alexander had been through countless employees in the past year, none of them lasting more than a few months. He watched everyone, carefully testing their character through hidden observations. His children deserved genuine care, not pretense driven by his wealth. Emma Collins arrived at the grand entrance, carrying a small worn suitcase and wearing a simple blue dress. Her eyes widened at the sight of the magnificent estate, but she squared her shoulders and walked forward with quiet confidence. The head butler, Mr. Harrison, greeted her with stern instructions about her duties, and the family she would serve. Emma listened attentively, her green eyes bright with determination. From his study window, Alexander observed the new maid as she was shown around the property. He noticed how she paused to admire the rose garden, how she smiled warmly at the other staff members. There was something different about her, a genuine kindness that seemed to radiate from within. Later that afternoon, Emma encountered the triplets in the library. Oliver had knocked over a stack of books while chasing his siblings. Instead of scolding them, Emma knelt down and helped gather the scattered volumes. She began telling them an animated story about brave knights and magical kingdoms. The children gathered around her, completely captivated. Alexander watched from the doorway, his heart stirring with an unfamiliar warmth. Emma had no idea he was there, observing her natural way with his children. She made them laugh, something he struggled to do lately. His analytical mind told him to remain cautious, but something deeper whispered that this woman might be different. That evening, Victoria Sterling, his fiancée, arrived for dinner. Alexander had proposed to her 3 months ago, more out of duty than love. His children needed a mother, and Victoria came from a respected family. But as he watched her interact coldly with the triplets, barely acknowledging their excitement about their day, he felt doubt creeping in. Emma served dinner, moving gracefully around the table. When Benjamin accidentally spilled his water, Victoria snapped at him harshly. Emma quickly stepped forward with a cloth, offering the boy a reassuring smile. And cleaning the mess without fuss, Alexander noticed everything. As night fell, Alexander found himself thinking about the new maid, wondering what secrets lay behind those intelligent green eyes. He had spent 2 years protecting his heart, but something told him Emma Collins would challenge everything he thought he knew about trust and love. Hidden truths. Emma had been working at the Whitman estate for 2 weeks, and each day brought new revelations. She noticed how Alexander watched everyone from the shadows, his dark eyes missing nothing. At first it unnerved her, but she soon understood he was protecting his children from those who might hurt them. Victoria visited frequently, always arriving with expensive gifts and grand gestures. But Emma saw what others missed, how Victoria ignored the triplets when Alexander was not looking, how she spoke harshly to the staff and treated them like furniture. During one afternoon tea, Victoria deliberately tripped Emma, causing her to spill hot tea across the Persian rug. Emma apologized immediately, but Victoria demanded Alexander fire her on the spot. Alexander had been standing in the adjacent hallway, listening to everything. Instead of firing Emma, he calmly told Victoria that accidents happen, and perhaps she should be more careful where she placed her feet. Victoria's face flushed with anger at being contradicted. That evening, Emma found Alexander in the library, reviewing business documents. She brought him coffee as instructed and turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. He asked her about her family, her dreams, why she chose to work as a maid. Emma spoke honestly about her father, who had died, leaving debts, about her dream to one day open a school for underprivileged children. Alexander listened intently, drawn to her authenticity. He shared small pieces of his own story about Victoria, about the loneliness that came with his position. Emma understood more than he expected. She told him that wealth and status meant nothing if the heart remained empty. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. The next day, Emma took the children to the garden for lessons. Charlotte confided that she did not like Victoria, that the woman pinched her when no one was looking. Emma's heart broke for the little girl. She promised to protect them, always not knowing Alexander stood behind a hedge overhearing every word. Later, Alexander confronted Victoria in his study. He told her he knew about her cruelty toward the children. Victoria laughed, claiming no one would believe the word of a maid over hers. She reminded him of their family's business connections, of the scandal that would result if he broke their engagement. Alexander felt trapped between duty and his growing feelings for Emma. That night, Emma could not sleep. She walked through the moonlit gardens and found Alexander sitting by the fountain. They talked for hours about loss, about fear, about the courage it takes to trust again. Alexander confessed he had been watching her, that he tested everyone who came near his children. Emma admitted she knew and understood why. Their hands touched briefly, sending sparks through both of them. Alexander pulled away, torn between desire and responsibility. Emma stood to leave, but he caught her hand. He looked into her eyes and whispered that she had changed something within him that he had not felt alive in years. Emma's breath caught as he moved closer. Before their lips could meet, Charlotte's scream pierced the night. They rushed inside to find Victoria standing over the crying child, claiming Charlotte had a nightmare. But Emma saw the red mark on Charlotte's arm, saw the fear in her eyes. Alexander saw it too, and something inside him finally broke. He told Victoria to leave immediately, that their engagement was over. Victoria threatened him, promised to ruin his reputation and destroy his business connections. Alexander stood firm, choosing his children and his heart over society's expectations. Victoria left in a fury, swearing revenge. Alexander turned to Emma, his eyes filled with emotion. He thanked her for showing him what truly mattered, for loving his children unconditionally. Emma smiled, tears streaming down her face. As dawn broke, Alexander pulled her into his arms, finally allowing himself to feel, finally daring to hope for love again. Dangerous obsession. Victoria Sterling was not a woman who accepted defeat. She returned to her family estate, consumed with rage at being dismissed. How dare Alexander choose a common maid over her? How dare he embarrass her in front of society? She would make them both pay for this humiliation. Within days, rumors began spreading through high society about Alexander and his inappropriate relationship with household staff. Business partners started questioning his judgment. Invitations to important social events were mysteriously withdrawn. Victoria had unleashed her network of influence, determined to destroy everything Alexander had built. Emma noticed the tension in Alexander's shoulders, the way worry lines creased his forehead. Business deals were falling through, investors were pulling out, and the pressure mounted daily. She wanted to leave to spare him the scandal, but Alexander refused. He told her that loving her was worth any price, that he would not let fear dictate his life anymore. The children adored Emma completely now. She taught them lessons in the morning, played games in the afternoon, and tucked them into bed with stories each night. Oliver called her his second mother, and Charlotte held her hand everywhere they went. Benjamin gave her his favorite toy soldier as a gift of trust. One evening, Alexander took Emma to the estate's private beach. They walked along the shore, waves lapping at their feet. He told her about Victoria's campaign against him, about the possibility of losing everything. Emma stopped and turned to face him. She said that she loved him, not his money, not his status, just him. Alexander kissed her deeply, pouring years of locked-away emotion into that single moment. But Victoria's schemes grew darker. She hired a private investigator to dig into Emma's past, searching for anything scandalous. The investigator discovered Emma's father had been accused of embezzlement before his death. Though never proven guilty, Victoria twisted the story, spreading lies that Emma was a thief just like her father. The rumors reached Alexander's business associates. They demanded he distance himself from Emma or face complete financial ruin. Alexander called a meeting with his board members and shocked everyone by defending Emma passionately. He presented evidence clearing her father's name and exposed Victoria's manipulation. Victoria learned of Alexander's defense, and her obsession turned dangerous. She began watching the estate from a distance, planning something more sinister than rumors. She contacted Emma's former employer, who had dismissed her, unfairly offering money for false testimony against Emma's character. Emma received threatening letters warning her to leave the Whitman family or face consequences. She hid them from Alexander, not wanting to burden him further. But Charlotte found one of the letters and brought it to her father. Alexander's protective instincts roared to life. He hired security and vowed to end Victoria's harassment permanently. Meanwhile, Emma struggled with guilt, wondering if her presence truly was destroying Alexander's life. He found her crying in the garden and lifted her chin. He told her she was the best thing that ever happened to him, that together they would overcome any obstacle. Emma believed him, because his love gave her strength. Victoria made her final move. She appeared at a charity gala where Alexander was the keynote speaker. She publicly accused Emma of seducing him for money, of manipulating his grief for personal gain. The room fell silent, all eyes on Alexander. He walked to Emma and took her hand. In front of everyone, Alexander declared his love for Emma. He explained how she had saved him from a life of emptiness, how she had shown his children genuine kindness. He announced his intention to marry her and dared anyone to question his choice. The room erupted in whispers, but several people began clapping in support. Victoria lunged forward, attempting to strike Emma, but security intervened. Alexander obtained a restraining order that night. Finally, they were free from her poisonous influence. Emma and Alexander returned home exhausted but triumphant. The children ran to greet them, and for the first time in years, the house felt complete. Alexander proposed properly that night with his late wife's blessing, given through a letter she had written before her death, asking him to find love again. Emma said yes, and they kissed under the stars, knowing their love had survived every test thrown at them. Their future together was just beginning, shadows of the past. 3 months had passed since the charity gala, and life at the Whitman estate had transformed into something beautiful. Emma and Alexander planned their wedding while the triplets excitedly prepared to have Emma as their new mother. The business recovered as true friends and honest partners returned, supporting Alexander's choices. But peace never lasted long. One morning, a stranger appeared at the estate gates claiming to be Emma's brother. Emma went pale when she saw him through the window. She had not seen Daniel Collins in 5 years, not since he had stolen her inheritance and disappeared into gambling debts. Alexander noticed Emma's distress immediately. He stood beside her protectively as Daniel was brought into the sitting room. Daniel looked rough, worn down by years of bad decisions, but his eyes held the same charm that had fooled people before. He claimed he had changed, that he wanted to reconcile with his sister. Emma did not believe him. She knew Daniel only appeared when he needed money. Alexander asked him directly what he wanted. Daniel dropped the act and demanded $50,000, or he would sell fabricated stories about Emma to the press. Stories that would paint her as a manipulative fortune hunter. Alexander refused to be blackmailed. He told Daniel to leave and never return. But Daniel sneered, saying he had already contacted several newspapers. He showed them draft articles filled with lies about Emma's supposed schemes. Alexander's jaw clenched with fury, but Emma placed a calming hand on his arm. That night, Emma made a difficult decision. She told Alexander she would leave to protect him and the children from further scandal. Alexander was stunned and angry. He told her running away solved nothing, that they faced problems together. Emma argued that Daniel would never stop, that her past would always haunt them. Alexander pulled Emma close and told her something he had never shared with anyone. Victoria had not been his only mistake. Years ago, he had trusted a business partner who betrayed him, stealing millions. He had learned that running from problems gave them power. Standing firm and fighting back was the only way. Emma realized Alexander was right. Together, they hired lawyers and investigators to expose Daniel's criminal history. They discovered he was wanted in 3 states for fraud. The evidence was overwhelming. When confronted with potential arrest, Daniel broke down, confessing his lies. The newspapers Daniel had contacted received the truth instead of his fabrications. Several published stories praising Alexander for standing by Emma and exposing corruption. Public opinion swung completely in their favor. Daniel was arrested and Emma finally found closure with her painful past. As the threat ended, Emma and Alexander grew even closer. The children flourished under Emma's care. Oliver excelled in his studies. Charlotte became confident and joyful. Benjamin opened up about his feelings. Alexander watched his family transform and thanked fate for bringing Emma into their lives. One evening, Alexander took Emma to the place where they first kissed under the stars. He told her that every challenge they faced made their love stronger, that he had never imagined feeling this complete. Emma confessed she had loved him from the moment she saw him watching over his children with such devotion. They set their wedding date for the following month. The entire estate buzzed with excitement as preparations began. Emma insisted on a simple ceremony, but Alexander wanted to celebrate their love properly. They compromised on an elegant garden wedding, surrounded by close friends and family. Charlotte asked if she could call Emma mother. Now Emma knelt down, tears in her eyes, and said she would be honored. The little girl hugged her tightly, followed by Oliver and Benjamin. Alexander watched his children embrace the woman who had saved them all, and his heart overflowed with gratitude. But one final shadow remained. Victoria had been silent since the restraining order. Too silent, Alexander's security team reported she had been meeting with dangerous people making inquiries about the estate's vulnerabilities. Alexander increased protection around his family, refusing to let Victoria threaten their happiness again. Emma felt fear creeping back, but she refused to let it control her. She had fought too hard for this love for this family. Victoria Sterling would not take it away. They prepared for whatever came next, standing united. Alexander promised Emma that nothing would stop their wedding, that soon she would be his wife forever. The rehearsal dinner arrived filled with laughter and joy. Alexander stood to give a toast, looking at Emma with such love that everyone felt it. He declared that Emma had taught him to live again, to trust again, to love without fear. Emma stood and kissed him as their guests cheered. Their wedding day was tomorrow, and nothing would ruin it. Forever begins. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Emma woke in her room surrounded by flowers that Alexander had sent with a note saying he could not wait to make her his wife. The children bounced excitedly, bringing her breakfast in bed and telling her how beautiful she would look as their mother. Victoria watched the estate from a distance, her mind twisted with jealousy. She had spent months planning this final act of revenge. She had bribed a member of the catering staff to create chaos during the ceremony. But what Victoria did not know was that Alexander's security had already identified and removed the threat. Emma dressed in a simple, elegant white gown that made her look like an angel Charlotte, and the florist wove fresh roses into her hair, while Oliver and Benjamin argued over who would walk with her down the aisle. Emma laughed at their antics, feeling more love than she ever had in her life. Alexander stood at the altar, his heart pounding as he waited for Emma. The garden was transformed into a magical paradise with white flowers everywhere. Their closest friends and the household staff who had become family filled the seats. When the music began, everyone turned to see Emma. She walked down the aisle flanked by all three triplets who had insisted on escorting her together. Alexander's eyes filled with tears at the sight of his entire world coming toward him. Emma's smile was radiant, her love shining through every step. When she reached him, he whispered that she was perfect. The officiant began the ceremony speaking about love that overcomes obstacles, about families built on trust and devotion. When it came time for vows, Alexander spoke from his heart. He told Emma she had saved him from darkness, that she had shown him life was worth living. He promised to cherish her every day, to protect her. Always, Emma's vows were equally powerful. She thanked Alexander for seeing past her humble background, for trusting her with his children's hearts. She promised to stand beside him through every challenge, to love him with everything she had. Their voices trembled with emotion as they exchanged rings. Just as the officiant said they were now husband and wife, a commotion erupted at the garden entrance. Victoria had broken through security, screaming that she would not allow this wedding to happen. Alexander moved to shield Emma, but she stepped forward calmly. Emma looked at Victoria with pity, not fear. She told her that holding on to hatred only destroyed the person carrying it, that Alexander had moved on, and she should too. Victoria seemed shocked by Emma's composure, by her lack of anger. Something in Emma's words broke through Victoria's obsession. Victoria collapsed, crying, realizing how far she had fallen. Security escorted her away gently this time, as she asked for help for therapy. Emma had shown mercy when she could have demanded prosecution. Alexander looked at his wife with awe, at her capacity for forgiveness and grace. The ceremony concluded with thunderous applause as Alexander kissed Emma deeply. Their guests cheered, and the children hugged them both. The celebration that followed was filled with joy, dancing, and heartfelt speeches. Alexander never let go of Emma's hand amazed that she was finally his wife. That evening, as the party wound down, Alexander and Emma stood on the balcony watching the stars. He told her their journey had been difficult, but worth every moment. Emma agreed, saying that real love required courage, that they had proven theirs was unbreakable. The triplets ran out in their pajamas, begging for one more dance. Emma laughed and swept Charlotte into her arms while Alexander grabbed the boys. They danced under the moonlight, a family united by love stronger than blood. As the children finally fell asleep, Alexander carried them inside one by one. Later, Alexander found Emma in their bedroom, looking at her wedding ring. He wrapped his arms around her and whispered that this was just the beginning. Emma turned in his embrace and kissed him deeply. They had fought through scandal, manipulation, and danger to reach this moment. Their love story had started with hidden glances and stolen moments, with a maid who saw past wealth to the man beneath, and a widower who dared to trust again. Now they stood together as husband and wife, ready to face whatever the future held. Emma had changed everything forever. She had brought light back into Alexander's life, had shown his children what unconditional love looked like, had proven that true connection transcended social class. Alexander had given Emma a home, a family, and a love she never imagined possible. As they fell asleep in each other's arms, both knew that every obstacle had been worth it. Their hidden eyes had seen the truth, their stolen hearts had found their home. And together with 3 beautiful children and a future full of promise, they would live happily ever after, forever changed by a love that conquered all.